authors, and welcome back to So God Told You to Write a Book, Now What? I'm your host, Wendy Jo Cerna, and I am excited to venture into the second season of the podcast. In Season 1, I took you along with me through the process of writing, editing, and publishing my third novel, Solbakken, A Tale of Generations. I'm currently in the thick of getting my fourth novel, The Sabotage Scroll, finished up and published. But enough about me. Season 2 is going to be all about my fellow Christian authors who are launching their books. We're going to chat about the journey they took from the inception of their books to holding the finished products in their hands. So hop on board for Season 2 of So God Told You to Write a Book, Now What? I'm convinced you're going to find both inspiration and practical knowledge to help you obey the call of God on your life to create the book He has given you to create. Hey, if the author and finisher of all things told you to write a book, He believes that you can. And so do I. So come on, let's write. Well, hello, authors, and welcome back to So God Told You to Write a Book, Now What? We are on episode 5, and this is season 2, and I want to welcome to the podcast Theresa Haynes. Welcome, Theresa. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. This is wonderful.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. We get to talk about your new book, which I'm holding in my hands. It has a beautiful cover, and it is historical fiction called The Queen's Priest, the story of Blessed Thomas Abel. And it is set in the time of the Tudor king, King Henry VIII, correct?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Correct. Yes. So let me tell you just a little bit about Theresa before we jump into this. She has a journalist background, and she also received, this is an interesting master's degree, in the religious roots of Europe from Lund University in Sweden. Wow, why were you in Sweden?
Yeah, that's an interesting story. My husband got a job with IKEA, and they moved our whole family to Sweden. And so I spent some time trying to get a job at first and found that I didn't really have a lot of unique skills other than speaking and writing in English. And almost everyone there also speaks and writes very well in English. So I realized that I could go to university for free, actually, because it's part of their socialist system.
Yeah.
And so I applied for the program and got in, and it was incredible. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I've been to Lund. Sweden, it's all of it is very lovely, but that's nice. So you got to spend a year there or 2 years or what?
Yes, we were in Sweden for 2.5 years.
Okay.
And I finished up my master's degree after we moved back here during COVID. So when everyone was in lockdown, I was writing my thesis.
Oh, that's fine. Well, you had something to keep you busy. That's good.
Yeah, for sure.
And you have 2 children?
Yes, I do.
Is this true? And you homeschooled them for 2 decades. Wow,
Yes.
That's a lot. But you finished with that season now? Are they off and running in their own lives?
They are. They're doing well. And so it was time for me to think about the next thing and pray and ask the Lord, what do you want me doing next?
Yeah. So how did you start with this journey of writing about Blessed Thomas Abel, who, by the way, is an ancestor of yours, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So when my son left a home, he actually went on a mission trip to Nepal with YWAM.
Okay.
And I was super excited for him, and my daughter was doing well. She was already graduated from university in Colorado. And I was just really asking the Lord, what do you have for me? What do you want me to do next? And I really felt like I should go back to writing. And so I started writing a little bit, and I actually visited Northwest Christian Writers. And I was really intimidated to walk through the front door. I remember telling my husband, I have to be careful what I wear because I could end up as a character in somebody's novel.
Paranoia, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, And on the way to the meeting, I heard from my son. He was in Nepal at over 14,000 feet and suffering from elevation sickness.
Yeah.
And so I had all this concern and worry. When I was a kid and went on a mission trip, you didn't call your mom from your cell phone.
Right.
at 14,000
Right.
feet.
Yeah.
So it was a different kind of prayer, you know.
Hmm.
But I was just met with such love and kindness from the people who were there, and I really felt like I found my tribe.
Hmm.
And I went to their writers conference, the Renewal Conference.
Yep.
And while I was there, I had the opportunity to pitch some story ideas. And at the time, I had thought that I was going to write nonfiction because I have a
Right.
journalism background.
Right.
I
Yeah.
love to read nonfiction. So I sat down with a woman, I told her my idea, and she was like, okay, you know. I said, but I do have this other idea. There's this story I've always wanted to write. And I started to tell her about how I grew up hearing that I was related to a man named Thomas Abell who had spent the last 7 years of his life in the Tower of London. And he had carved his name and the family emblem in the tower. But I didn't really know a whole lot about him until I started doing some research and found out that
Hmm.
he was the personal confessor to Queen Catherine of Aragon, King Henry VIII's first wife.
Right.
And, that's a story that has been told over and over and over again, but not from the perspective of a faithful priest. It's
Yeah.
mostly told from the perspective of all these crazy sex scandals and
Right.
whatnot. And so I was telling this marketer the story, and she just looked at me with these big eyes and she said, that's the story you need to write.
Mm.
So I
Hmm.
came home and I started doing research and really looking into it. And that I spent about a year just doing the
Yeah.
research,
Yeah. I'm sure.
and which ended up taking me to
I was
London.
going to
I
say, did
ended
you get
up,
to go to the Tower of London? And
I did. So I've been interested in this story for about 20 years, probably. And when
okay.
I first started kind of looking into it, I went to a local university library in Los Angeles where we were living.
Hmm.
And there just wasn't a lot of information out. But as the internet has grown and grown and grown, more resources have come online. And
Sure.
so I was able to read some books that are out of print, that are over 100 years old, that mention Thomas Abell. And so I was getting a lot more information about him. And I found that he had written a book in 1530s called
Hmm.
Invicta Veritas, The Unconquerable Truth. And it's actually in English. And so I went to my local library and talked to my librarian.
Yeah.
Said, how can I get a hold of this book? And she looked it up on WorldCat, which is a online resource. And she said, well, there's only two copies that are in print still. And
Okay.
one of them is in the British Library. So I guess you won't get to see it. And I looked at it and I thought, well,
Well,
maybe I
yeah,
could.
why not?
So we had a trip already planned to Europe to celebrate when our son was leaving for college.
Yeah.
And so I decided that I would just make a stop in at the British Library. And it's amazing. Almost
Yeah.
anyone can go in, get a library card, and have access to these incredible resources. So I was able to hold it in my hand.
Wow.
Yeah, the actual copy. It was like
Wow.
500 years old. Yeah.
That's so amazing.
Yeah, and there was a librarian there who was super helpful. And he said, you obviously you can't take this home, but there's a transcript of it on our computer
Hmm.
that somebody has transcribed just so that you can read it more easily. Because a
Sure.
book that's written 500 years old, even if it's in English, it's very hard to read because of the actual font in the print.
Hmm. Hmm.
So he printed out the entire transcript of this book
Wow.
and gave it to me. And so I took it home and spent the next few weeks just poring over it and trying to understand why Thomas did what he did.
Right. Because that book is really Thomas's his wrestling with the scriptures and God about was it really legal for King Henry to divorce Queen Catherine of Aragon based on some scripture from the Old Testament that he was sort of twisting to his own devices. And a lot of the church at that time got swayed by his because he was a very powerful guy, let's face it. And they were saying, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. You can do that to Mary, who Anne Boleyn was the next in
Hmm.
line. She didn't last very long either, but because he was married to Queen Catherine for 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Right.
don't I don't think I realized that before I started
I
looking
didn't
into
either.
it. I mean, in school, I think I learned the little ditty divorced, headed, died, divorced, beheaded, survived.
Yeah.
And so, so it just
To
sounds like I have,
remember all the wives. That's what
yes,
that is for.
yes,
Yeah. Hmm.
that's right. Henry VIII had six wives, but it was that first divorce that really broke everything open
Yeah.
because with that first divorce, King Henry VIII leaves the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
It's right in the center of the Reformation movement. So I wanted to also make sure this story reflected that. And
Yeah.
I put that in there. So that was a whole nother layer of research that I had
And
fun doing.
yes, exactly. Because the Pope just wouldn't bend his knee on Saint. What? First of all, you've been married for 20 years. She only had one child who lived, which was part of the problem because she was a girl. But they'd had how many children who had either been born and died quickly or like four or five?
I think we know of six children that
Okay.
she had. So
Yeah.
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 Hmm.
So then he said that we're going to have it annulled.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that takes some doing, and the Pope wouldn't do it. And so he said, fine, then I will just leave the Catholic Church altogether and establish myself as head of the Church of England. Is that the beginning of the Church of England?
That is actually the beginning of Church of England. Yep. Hmm.
Wow. Just so he could marry Anne Boleyn. She
Yeah.
must have been quite a woman. Very interesting. So you had to do a lot of research. This is the first time I'm interviewing someone doing historical fiction. So
Hmm.
research has to be a huge part of this because you're telling a true story. But so you have to get all the facts. But then how do you make it engaging and relevant and easy for because it's not like reading a textbook at all. It is a story with characters who are very alive and very real. You do a beautiful job of that. But how did you overcome that challenge? Like, tell me about that.
Yeah, that's funny. I really worried about this at the beginning because I said I knew all the facts to the story, but I don't want it to be boring. And I would tell
Hmm.
somebody all the facts of the story, and they look at me and just laugh and say, "You think that might be boring?"
Right. No, hard to
So
make that boring. Yeah.
yeah. So Thomas, we think some of the historians that I had read think that he probably came into the Queen's household as an English priest who was bilingual, knew both Spanish and English as a spy
Hmm.
for the king and for the king's right-hand man, Cardinal Wolsey. And
Right.
so I kind of went with that this idea that he might have come in with a lot of fear of man or anxiety about, I have to do this thing, but wrestling because he's also a person of high character and a lot of integrity, and black is black and white is white, and this is the truth. That's also his personality. So
Hmm.
there's this sort of natural progression from fear to courage.
Yes.
And so I was able to kind of do that. But to answer your question about making it more of an engaging story and not just a biography,
Yeah.
I really spent a lot of time just really considering, why did he do what he did?
Hmm.
Was it really about the divorce? Was it about something more? Who was he? And
Yeah.
for me, the only way I could answer that question was if I could get into his head.
Yep.
And I felt like to do that authentically, I needed to write it as a novel and not a biography, because I wanted to get into his mind and kind of listen in on his prayers to God and
Hmm.
his fears and his concerns. And no one can do that about someone else unless it's fiction. So,
Yeah, it's true.
but
Without getting sued, at least. Yeah.
yeah, no one knows the heart except for the
Yeah.
person.
Yeah. But you do a great job with all the characters. And Queen Catherine she's the daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella, the King and Queen of Spain. So she was a Spanish speaking
Hmm.
Spaniard, but also a very bright, educated woman for her
That's right.
times and
Hmm.
very capable. And she and Henry made quite a pair, it sounds like, for a lot of years until they didn't. But you did a good job of making her a human being as well, very much torn to being loyal to her role and to her husband, and yet not compromising her faith, which seemed to be a very viable Catholic faith system that she participated in as well. So
Yeah.
it was fun to read about her. Like, as I know her name and I know where she comes from, but to sort of flesh her out as a real person was fun to read.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah, you do a great job.
I had fun learning about her. I also wrestled with this as well because my part of the story is not known. You can go to the Tower of London, you can see Thomas Abell's carving, but very few people know his story.
Yeah.
But many, many people know the story of King Henry VIII and Catherine and their divorce. There have
Yeah.
been many movies, many books, many series. There's even a Broadway show called Six right now that's doing very well about the
Okay.
six wives.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was stepping into something that other people had already done well in depicting Catherine of Aragon. And so that was kind of intimidating to me. I
Sure.
wanted her to be unique. And also, I really wanted to focus on her faith, that it
Hmm.
wasn't just some veneer of hers,
Yeah.
but it was a deep, relevant part of why she did the things that she did. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it comes across very clearly. So when along the way, you self-published this or how did you publish this? I don't even know.
I, yeah, I self-published.
Okay. And how did you land on doing that?
Well, I I actually had a few meetings with literary agents and I presented and they were always really interested at first and then I got some pushback and some of the main pushback was that there hasn't been a Tudor fiction published successfully in the Christian publishing world, maybe ever.
Hmm.
And nobody kind of wants to be the first. Like if it had been like Civil War, that's really popular, or Amish, or some of these
Yeah.
other time periods, then that would have been an easier sell. And also, there was, the fact that he was a Catholic priest
Yeah.
opposing divorce was
Yep.
something that people said, well, I don't know if your audience will want to hear about that. There's an awful lot of divorced people out there, and you don't want to offend them.
Hmm.
And I really wrestled with that too because I don't want this to be a statement about divorce. I don't think
Right.
it was for Thomas either, but it is a big part of the story.
Yeah, it
So,
is. It's what propels Henry VIII to do what he's doing. Is that what that was necessary in his world in the time? We're talking about the 1500s, Tudor
mhm.
England. So, but that he had to do that in order to be legally married to the next woman.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think to answer the question though, there didn't seem to be a convenient place for it within Christian publishing. And I
Hmm.
wasn't sure that within secular publishing that they would really accept all of the conversations that Thomas has between himself and God. It's very religious in a lot of ways, and it didn't fit neatly into any of the boxes that I could
Yeah.
find. So I decided just to publish it myself.
Yeah. And isn't it amazing that we have that opportunity nowadays? Like this industry is so wide open where it used to be you could only go through gatekeepers and you only got a yes or no and then that was it. You didn't have now all this publish on demand and the thing you don't have to storehouse 1,000 books that you have to buy outright either. It's amazing. You can self-publish and off you go. There's ways to do it now that there didn't used to be even 20 years ago. So that's very
Yeah.
cool. So that was a hurdle of several
Mhm.
hurdles that you had to overcome. Were there any other big hurdles that you had to overcome along the journey?
Oh man, I think it's a head game always, you know? And so there were many times where I wondered, is this worth it? This is a lot of
Yeah,
work. Couldn't I have picked an easier story to start with? There's all these layers of wanting to make
yeah,
sure it's historically accurate and also interesting, that sort of thing. And yeah, I think perseverance was a big lesson for me coming out of this. You know, I
yeah.
used I used to run marathons
Oh,
about 10
really?
years ago. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I used to say at the time that anyone could run a marathon. It was just a matter of putting one foot in front of the other until you finish. It's not like baseball where you have to learn all these specific skills. I mean,
True.
you just have to run.
Hmm.
But, you know, I don't know that I would say that now anyone can run a marathon
Hmm.
because I realize like we all have different abilities. And I have a little, now that it's been about 10 years, I have a little bit of space between that experience and go, that was a lot of work.
Yes.
And I think self-publishing, I feel the same way about it. Almost anyone could publish a book if they really wanted to. They
Right.
just broke it down into different steps and said, okay, first I'm going to write I need help with editing. I'm
Hmm.
going to hire an editor.
Yeah.
And then you work with the editor. And then I'm not great at doing covers. that's probably a good thing. I will hire a cover designer.
Right.
And you start to like, work as your own project manager and
Hmm.
put all the pieces together. And then one day you realize I have a book.
It's true. I've not run a marathon, but I've written a few books, and I think I feel the same way about it is just one foot in front of the other. And the only books that don't get published are those that you quit on. I mean, because there's a way to do it these days that you don't have to have the gatekeepers put, the kibosh on it. You can find
Hmm.
a way. But I also think that you had a bit of a head start on some of this because you have a lot of writing background to begin with. You did schooling in journalism, and it's clear that you have writing skills. I mean, this is your debut novel, and it's written really well. Like sometimes I plod through debut novels and think it's a fantastic story, but they could have used a better editor. That's just, this is part of the problem. This is what I find out is that as you get good at something, anything that you spend your 10,000 hours getting, skilled and mastered in, then that whole area of your life, it's hard to accept the mediocre. But it also allows you to really enjoy when things are excellent because you know all that had to go into that and it brings you joy because of the recognition of that. And I felt that way with your book.
Oh,
Like
thank
there's clearly a level of writing skill that is there that allows you to sort of forget about the writing and
you.
just enjoy the storyline. So bravo on that. Where did you find your editor?
Reedsy. Do you know about Reedsy?
I do. Tell our audience about Reedsy.
So Reedsy is a platform where writers and different people who serve writers, like editors, cover designers, I don't know what else would be on there, but that sort of service providers can
Yeah.
connect with writers, and you kind of make a bid. So I said, "This is my budget, and here's the first chapter of my book." And several people wrote back with feedback and how much they would charge, and we went back and forth, and I finally found somebody in England, actually,
Oh,
which was kind
really?
of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was my developmental editor.
Yeah.
And then I realized, okay, that's wonderful. I learned so much from her. I felt like I had enrolled in a college level class, actually.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then I needed a line editor or a copy editor. So at that point, I I think I went on, I'm not actually sure how I got that second editor. I did not go back through Reedsy. Reedsy is wonderful, but I
Yeah.
wanted specifically to find an editor with a Catholic background
Mm.
because I don't actually have a Catholic background, but I really wanted my story to honor Thomas's Catholicism and not say
Yeah.
anything weird that, a
That you
modern
just don't know.
evangelical.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I had several Catholic beta readers that I had met on Facebook, on different Facebook page
Mm-hmm.
things. I kind of went a little crazy and friended a bunch of Facebook
Yeah.
groups trying to meet people and stuff. Got some wonderful feedback that way.
Yeah.
And that
That's
was my
good.
second one. Yeah.
So
And then,
can we just explain, well, because not everybody knows there's
okay.
all kinds of different editors. I didn't know this when I was first starting. So a developmental editor, what did they do for you? Like, can you explain what your experience was with a developmental editor?
Yeah, so a developmental editor looks at the overall story as a
Hmm.
as a whole. And so is this working? Do I need to develop certain characters better? So in my story, my main villain to begin with is Cardinal Thomas Wolsey. And everyone who read it said that he was great, but that Thomas Abel was kind of, well, just not that engaging.
Hmm.
And I realized it's sometimes it's easy to write the villain,
Yeah.
but it's hard to write a saint. It's
Yeah.
really hard to write to show weakness and to show things that would make people love him. And so I really worked with her on that to kind of bring him out of the story a little bit
Yeah.
better. Let's see, what else did she help me with? Little things like, oh, I noticed that, you have a dog in this scene and this scene, and the dog disappears. So
Yeah.
we brought the dog back in for a few more scenes.
Yeah. It's good because, sometimes you can't see the forest for all the trees. You get so enveloped in your storyline that you lose some of those things. I remember my first developmental editor was, like you say, it was like taking a college level class.
Yeah.
And I was so new and so not a writer that she gave me pages and pages of notes. But she was wise enough. She said, okay, I want you to read through all of it. And then I want you to put it aside for 3 days and just
Mhm.
don't, because it's going to upset you, I'm sure. But then come back and just look at one item at a time and address them or don't address them. It's your book. You can do whatever you want. But this is my job to help you make it better. And she was exactly right. I looked at all of those edits and I was like, oh, that's it. I'm done. I can't even do this so much.
Yeah.
And then I set it aside for 3 days and I went back and said, okay, no, she's right about that. Yep, I can definitely see where she's right about that. And then you go back in and you do the work. It
Hmm.
just takes work to develop and actually refine things to make them the best they can be. Now, if I were writing my first book now, it would be different because I know different things now than I knew then.
Hmm.
But for that time and space and where I was at, it was the best I could crank out with this. But the developmental editor was fantastic. I went through a couple of rounds with her because I needed so much help. And then you went to a copy editor or a line editor. I don't remember what you said.
I believe he was more of a copy. No, he would have been, I'm confused a little bit. I think he
I
was
know.
the line, and then copy is the last one, right?
Yes, right.
So I did do 3 rounds of human editing, and then I
Yeah.
ran it through some AI editors as well. And it was really cool to see. I got valuable feedback even from ChatGPT.
Did you?
ChatGPT did not write my book, but it did help me catch a few errors that I had not caught. So,
Ah, yeah, that's a good idea because even after a lot of human eyes have looked at things, you still go back and go, oh, wait, that is not the word I wanted right there.
yes,
Or
yeah.
that is not how that word is spelled. There are lots of things. So,
Yeah, and honestly, even after layers and layers of people looking over it, just in listening to this audiobook that I'm having produced right now, I heard another error where it's something that probably not many people would notice, but we talk about a legatine court, and
yeah.
the person who directs it is the legate. And I had called it a legate court about
Oh,
20 times. And so I mentioned it to my narrator and he fixed it. And so the audiobook is actually just slightly cleaner than the print version.
nice. Nice. I know. I was reading through a novel, I don't know, this was years ago, and somebody was describing somebody who had a really sharp mind, and they called it in the book, a traditionally published book, it was called a photogenic mind. I'm
Hmm.
like, I don't think it's a photogenic mind. I think it's a photographic mind because
Oh, yeah.
a photogenic mind would mean you could take pictures of it and it looks great. But nobody had caught it because it's a real word and it was spelled correctly. It was just not
Mhm.
the right word for the time. But so thank God for editors. So,
Yeah.
so you did 3 full rounds of edits.
Yes.
And how long did this take you from start to finish?
I would say I spent a year in the editing process.
Yeah.
But I think that's my developmental editor and I spent at least 2 months because she
Yeah.
would give me about 2 or 3 chapters. I would rewrite it. I sent it back to her and she would look
Okay.
at it again. She was wonderful. She kept
Nice.
looking at things. So I felt like I got a really good value out of
Yeah.
that situation.
Yeah. So you did a year of research.
Hmm.
And then how long did you spend just writing out your first draft?
So when I say I did a year of research, that probably includes the first draft.
Okay.
It was
Okay.
researching. So it's interesting with writing something like this, there's the initial research, like the timeline and just the basic things. And
Mm-hmm.
then I wrote the first draft. And then because I was immersed in this time period so much, I kept learning new things.
Sure.
So for the next, I would say, year and a half, I was always going to tuck in a new little detail here or there, and
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
what
because you
people were
can't you
wearing.
can't be what you're wearing or what you're eating or how you're
Mhm.
traveling. All those things are the 1500s. Yeah.
It, it was so fun, It's like I'd learn about people eating marzipan cakes. And I'm like, oh, I got to put that in somewhere, I'd go back through the draft and find where I could add it in.
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to eat one. Try that. That sounds amazing. Marzipan cake. So I know you were a journalist, but did you always want to be a writer or did you discover this along the way?
I think when I was a little kid, I definitely wanted to write stories. I had a character named Baby Horse.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was about 7 or 8, my mom helped me publish my first story. By say publish, I mean, yeah, I took a box of Life cereal and cut off the ends of it to make these hardback books.
Yes.
And I wrote it and drew all the pictures. It was
Do you
great.
still have it?
I think my mom still
Yeah.
has it. I think she might. It's kind of funny. I think I always was pretty serious as well. Like I had to have like a reason behind the story. I'm pretty sure that by the end of the story, all of the crayon figures who are part of the story, it was like the horse and
Mhm.
his friends, which is a box of crayons, all these crayons, and they
Okay.
rescue somebody who's drowning in the sea, and then they share the gospel with her, and she becomes a Christian, even though she's a shell. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah. Uh-huh. So that's fun. So you did that in elementary school, guessing. Did you
Yeah.
continue to write through your all of your schooling into college or?
Not really. I think that I might have, like many people, put away childish ways for a while. And I did want to continue writing. And so when I went to college, I realized if I went into journalism, that would be sort of a practical way to continue writing.
Yeah.
So I worked as a newspaper reporter, but I didn't really think a lot about writing fictional stories. This is my first big fictional anything.
Really?
Well, actually, that's not entirely true. Around 2000, when my kids were born and I had stopped working as a newspaper reporter, I wrote some short stories that were
Okay.
published in Clubhouse magazine.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of my first foray into fictional stories.
Okay. Did you continue to do any journalistic stuff when your kids were growing up, or you just focused on raising kids?
I really didn't, and I kind of thought that that door had was closed.
Hmm.
A lot of newspapers were closing. The
Right.
newspapers that were still around, the salaries didn't even pay for childcare. So I kind of just thought I had moved on from that, but I,
Hmm.
I really did miss it. And so when an opportunity opened up 2 or 3 years ago to write with World Magazine
Hmm.
and their podcast, The World and Everything in It, I went to their journalism program and was able to freelance for them. So I am doing some journalism again,
Are you?
and yeah. And I just started that actually during the process of writing this book. That
Hmm.
might be another reason why it took 3 years. So,
Yeah. That's all right. I have this mantra that I do some painting and stuff too, and I took one that was my gift to myself in COVID as I took some painting classes. And it would sort of help
oh,
me save my sanity. But what I found is that one form of creativity sort of keeps the flow going and
yes.
opens up pathways to another form of creativity. So if I'm stuck in writing, I'm like, just put it aside, go pick up my paintbrushes and just get lost in that. And then as I'm painting, like, oh, little ideas would flutter up and I could go back to my writing. And so sometimes it's nice to have a diversion from your big project that like you say, it's a head game after a while, some doubts and you get stuck sometimes. And so
Mhm.
I think it's good to have other ways that you're flowing in creativity because journalism takes some creativity. Not that we are, let's put that, it takes some skill and thought and use of words in a different way, I imagine.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. I like that idea of the different kinds of creativity feeding each other. I find that even going for a walk or
Yeah.
a hike, you
Yep.
know?
Oh yeah, definitely. I have so many writing ideas as I'm walking, I like to walk in my neighborhood and I'm usually listening either to music or another podcast. And then I'll realize, okay, I didn't even hear the last half an hour of what they were talking about because I got so much stuff swirling in my head. Like, wow, but
Yeah.
it frees you up. I think maybe just getting oxygen and blood flowing in your body is helpful. Okay, so
hmm
let's see. What did you learn either about yourself and or God in this writing process that maybe you didn't know before?
You know, perseverance was a big thing,
Mm-hmm.
learning to just persevere, but also, it's funny. I was looking at some journals. I'm a big journaler, and I was looking at some journals that I started around the time that I started this project, and I just found a part where I was just talking to the Lord, and I was remembering a really big prayer request that He had answered. When my daughter wanted to go to a Christian college, we didn't actually have the money to send her, and it
Mm-hmm.
looked like it was going to be a no-go. And I just contended with the Lord about that. Like, Lord, you put it in her heart to go to this Christian college. You can pay for the desires
Yeah.
that you put out there. You pay for what you order, Lord. And if
Yep.
you want her to go, you can do that. And I thought, I do want to write this book. I'm kind of afraid to say it out loud, but I really do want to write this book. And I it just feels like I'm not going to be able to do it. It just feels like an unsurmountable task.
Yeah.
And I was like, why is it so easy to pray for my kids
Hmm.
to have something that I feel like the Lord's put in their life, but I don't pray for myself? And I was remembering in my daughter's situation, the Lord did provide for her to go to that college.
Mm-hmm.
She did graduate uh, debt free, amazingly so,
Wow.
even though we didn't have it. I know it was
Yeah.
totally an answer to prayer. And so I thought, I need to be praying that way for myself as well. And so
Huh.
I was
That's
like,
good.
Lord, it's my desire to write this book, and it seems impossible at this moment in
Mm-hmm.
April of 2022. And so I just ask that you would empower me to do that. And I don't know. It was just kind of fun to find that. I just found that this morning in an old journal. So,
That's
yeah.
very good. And you, even now, as we're talking, the reason for this whole podcast is so that other people like you and me, who aren't quite sure, who are looking
Mhm.
at that insurmountable mountain of this book that I think God is asking me to write and thinking, I
Mhm.
don't know if I can do that. Well, you and I are living testaments of, well, yeah, you can.
Mhm.
You can.
Yeah. It's amazing. I think another thing that I learned is at the beginning of the process, I was really, sometimes it's hard for people to catch the vision
Yeah.
of what you're wanting to do. And so that was difficult. I heard like, oh, you need to have 1,000 people on your mailing list before you publish and
Right.
and all this. And the thing that I've found is once I started taking steps and investing in it myself, saying, no,
Mm-hmm.
this is really a book. I really am going to finish this. Once it had a cover on it, everyone wanted to read it. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, 6 months ago, I asked if you wanted to be a beta reader and you weren't that interested. So, I think there's something about just saying, I think this is important enough that I'm going to put some effort behind it and that people kind of catch the vision and get
Yeah.
excited for you and rally around you.
Yeah, but they don't see all the hours of you sitting at your computer, you digging through the
Mhm.
research. Did you have a specific time of day that you would sit down and write or a schedule that you adhered to?
You know, I struggled with that so much because I wanted to.
Yeah.
But I'm also a very flexible person and I try to fit around what my husband's
Yeah.
doing, what else is going on. And so sometimes I would write in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon. I was listening to your first season of the of this podcast where you
Yeah.
mentioned that you wrote in the afternoon. And that was actually really freeing for me because
Oh,
everyone
yeah.
says you have to read first thing in the morning, right first thing in the morning. Well, by the time I visited with my husband, had coffee and made
Right.
breakfast and exercised, it's not first thing in the morning anymore. And so
Hmm.
I was like, how am I going to do that? Well, turns out sometimes I get a second wind at 3 or 4 in the afternoon too. So I write
Yeah.
lots of different times.
Yeah. And every book it was a little bit different. I think in that book it's just what that's what my schedule allowed, and that's when my brain was actually functioning the best during the day.
Mhm.
So that's what you do. But I think if you've got little kids or if you're working full time or I admire
Mhm.
people who get up and write first thing in the morning. I've never been a morning person, so if I wrote first thing in the morning, it would really have to be Holy Spirit driven. It would be miraculous. Let's just put it that way. Or it would be an entirely different book. That might be too. But yeah, but
Mhm.
I found the more consistent I was, no matter what time of day it was, the more consistent I was every day doing a little bit of something, the easier the flow of the story seemed to flow for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you take too many days off, it's hard to get back into it.
Yeah,
Although there is something to sometimes writing a piece and then waiting a few months and coming back and looking at it, and then
yeah,
you can see it with fresh eyes. But in general, I think just for productivity, taking a little baby step. Lynette Bonner, who goes to Northwest Christian
yeah.
Writers, I remember she gave a little talk once and she said, if you write 250 words a day, you could have a novel at the end of the year.
Hmm.
And I kind of took a hold of that. That's a really small chunk, but there are times where I just sit down and I just get a little bit. And I think, you know what? If I did just this little bit every day, I would be somewhere
Exactly.
sometime.
Yeah, eventually, somehow I would get there. So now you've decided to get your book done in an audio version as well. And
Hmm.
now I'm just starting the process of doing my last book right here in my studio. I do my own. But how did you connect with someone to do that for you?
Yeah, once again, everything's been a learning curve with this
Yeah.
first book out, and I really struggled with that. And I realized probably the best thing to do was to go with Audible's platform.
Hmm.
And so they have a platform called ACX,
Yes.
and anyone can go on there and take auditions.
Yeah.
There's just a whole process to it. So I, well, you have to have your book listed on Amazon, even if it's just a pre-release. And
Yeah.
so I put the book on Amazon as a pre-release, which actually kind of bit me in the butt later because I wasn't quite ready to release the paperback and the ebook. But
Yeah.
because I had already listed it as a pre-release on Amazon, I couldn't change it. They will
Oh.
actually penalize you pretty
Oh.
severely if you change that at the last minute. So,
Hmm.
or even a month ahead of time. So it kind
Okay.
of locked me in. But in a way, it was probably a good thing because I needed to just kind of move forward
Right.
and but anyhow, yeah. So I went on ACX and I put out a chapter that I wanted different people to read, and I got 52 auditions within 3 days.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah, I was kind of blown away. And
Yeah.
they were all across the board as far as how much
Yep.
people wanted.
Hmm.
And so I just found one that I really, really liked, and we've
Who
been working.
happens to be in England, true?
Yes, he is in England. And his name is Alex Bott, and he's done a few audiobooks already. He's also done a few live performances and BBC productions, things like that. So it's pretty
Yeah.
exciting to work with him.
Yeah. I've worked through ACX, independently myself, but I know they have like a whole catalog of actors, voice actors, and like you say, there's a wide range of cost. And generally it's they charge you per finished hour, which
Hmm.
means how much the finished hour is like if you have like my audiobooks are like 11 or 12 hours of running time. So they charge you per how long your book is. But that finished hour means they go into the studio and they record it and then they come back out and edit it, and all the work that goes into that. But it ranges from like, I don't know, probably the bottom end is about $75 an hour to $250, $300 an hour, depending upon the experience level and the skill of the voice actor, but some of them are also union. And the union, like SAG and AFTRA, they have minimum wages that they have to charge if they are a union member. But some of those people, if they're in the union, they've got some pretty good chops as far as audio stuff goes. But I'm just saying, like you say, it's a wide range of costs that you can have, but it also depends on how long your book is.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that I had been intimidated about the audiobook experience because it sounded like it would be really, really expensive. And
Right.
what I found is you can kind of do it with your budget.
Yeah, you
So,
can. You can.
I
And what's nice about ACX too is that they give you the legal documents so that you're protected and the voice actor is protected as far as a legal binding contract and the money that's exchanged and how that works. So I like that Audible does that, ACX does that for you.
hmm
Did that go smoothly for you? Are you still in process with all that?
we're still in process with that. Yeah. It there is an added layer of complexity because my actor is in another country.
Oh, right. Different
Yeah, but
monetary
yeah,
systems.
yeah. So in legal systems too.
Right.
So, every aspect of this has been a little bit of a step of faith.
Right?
Writing first, I didn't write a check, but sending it electronically, I was like, oh
Yep.
wow, okay, that was a lot of money.
Here we
But
go.
yeah, I mean, man, it's an investment, and I've just
It
really,
is.
really enjoyed already the
It
process.
is. And also the audiobook, the audible versions of books, it's the fastest growing segment of the book publishing world right now is audiobooks because people, I think part of it is the whole podcast phenomena is one thing, but people are used to just having their heads plugged in and listening to things as they're walking, as they're biking, as they're exercising, as they're cleaning, or like you can multitask and still
Mm-hmm.
get a book digested pretty easily. And it's very entertaining. The Queen's Priest is going to be a fantastic audio listen, especially with a great British actor doing it. I'm looking forward to listening to it. When do you think it'll be done? Do you know?
Our goal was for November.
Okay, coming right up. So, if you could give first-time authors advice, what would you tell them?
Just keep going, just keep working. It's hard to see the finished product when you start out. Sometimes you only have a little glimpse of the vision. And
Hmm.
if you just start moving in that direction, tools become available, people to help you become available, the Lord brings people into your life. Sometimes we don't want to take that first step until we can see all the way down the road.
Hmm.
And what I've found is just taking the first step, then you can take the next step, and then the next step, and things start coming together. And it's just been a delight. I'm in the place right now where I'm getting to enjoy some of the fruit of my labor, and
Yeah.
it's absolutely delightful.
What
And
feedback are you getting? The book has been out just for a month or so?
the paperback came out in August, so a month and a
Okay.
half.
What are you
Uh,
hearing from people?
some of the best stuff I've heard have been just the little texts I've gotten from family members.
Hmm.
There was somebody that was a friend of my parents who reads a book to his wife who's in a nursing home. Every day he goes
Hmm.
and he reads a book, and they read my book together.
Oh,
And I
beautiful.
was so honored by that. And my daughter has a friend who read the first few chapters where Thomas hears from the Lord, and
Hmm.
he's not from a background where that's part of his church culture,
Yeah.
and so he was like, "Okay, that helped me kind of think about what that would be like to hear from the Lord." And I was like, "That's why I wrote the book,
There you
just to
go.
kind of put flesh on these ideas, so they're not just ideas, but they're somebody's lived experience."
Yeah. And I think I told you the other night at the NCWA meeting that I mean, though the story takes place in the 1500s, it's so pertinent to the world we live in today. Because Father Thomas Abel had to stand up against some really powerful cultural forces. I mean, in the end, it cost him his life, and other people around him as well. But those pressures that we feel in today's world to really wrestle with God, with our own understanding of scripture and how we're going to apply that to our lives without the fear of man
Hmm.
interfering and saying, who am I supposed to fear? You or God? And Thomas, he landed on God and God alone. And like I say, I mean, 7 years in the tower, which was no walk in the park. And then eventually he loses his life as well. But I found it very pertinent and very encouraging to me, like this sense of courage that's required to live as a Christian in today's world.
Hmm.
Do you have any particular scriptures as we wind up here that were helpful to you in the process?
You know, I feel like there are new scriptures all along the process
Hmm,
over and over again. One of the verses that kind of surprised me, and this might take a minute to unpack,
that's okay.
but when I first started this journey, I thought of Thomas as a victim. He was a victim of King Henry VIII in his times.
Hmm,
And as I began to walk with the Lord about this and talk to him about it and think about it, I realized Thomas is a martyr because he chose to do the things that he did. He did
mm-hmm.
it, and I wanted to write it that way as well. I think that that's an accurate picture of what happened. It's also a more interesting story.
Yeah.
If you're writing a
Hmm.
story, make sure your main character is not just a victim, but that
Right.
they've actively chosen what's going on. So Thomas Abel his name is sometimes pronounced Abel, like it has one L. So, and part of that is just because historians spell things all differently. I'm sure if you ever do any kind of historical research, you'll find that.
Yeah.
And so, and part of my family pronounces Abel instead of Abel. My family
Hmm.
has always said Abel, but in my extended family, there are a lot of people who actually say Abel. So there's this connection between Abel and Abel. And
Hmm.
I spend a lot of time thinking about that. And in Hebrews, it talks about Abel as being a man of righteousness. And
Right.
he's included in the hall of the Hebrews
Right.
Hall of Faith.
In
Hall
Hebrews
of Faith.
11. Yeah.
Yes, in Hebrews 11. Yes, exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. And so, but if you look back in Genesis, it doesn't actually say a whole lot about Abel. It just says that he was born, he tended the flock, he gave his first flock to the Lord accepted it, and then it's all about Cain. And so I don't think we really focus on Abel that much, but I realized, yeah, Abel's life mattered as a martyr, as the first
Mm,
martyr. And I
right.
began to kind of make that connection. And then there's another verse that Jesus talks about the blood of Abel crying out, and
Right.
Hebrews talks about that too. And so I was thinking, this story matters as a depiction of how someone was righteous and was martyred, because in our world right now that is actually still happening, and
Yeah.
that could happen even more in this next generation.
Yeah.
And so for me, that those kind of verses, that's not just one verse, I guess that's a bit complicated, but
No, that's
um
good. It's a whole stream of thinking that goes way deeper underneath all these things when you
yeah,
20
the
years
blood of
ago.
the martyrs is the seed of the church.
There you go. That's the correct way to say it. Yeah, is the seed of
Yeah.
the church. So I
Yeah.
appreciate all of your effort that you've taken to write this. I think it's a really valuable thing. Anything else you want to talk about before we sign off?
No, thank you so much for this conversation. It's always fun to talk about Thomas Abell and just the writing process and enjoying it together.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. So, guys, thanks for listening. Go out and pick up Theresa Abell Haynes' book. It's on Amazon. Is it
Mhm.
elsewhere?
Right now it's on Amazon. We're working on getting it out there.
Okay. Go out and pick it up. It's a very good read. If you got some time, you're going on vacation or any space you've got. I just read it late at night when I couldn't sleep. So but it kept me up. My problem is I gotta read nonfiction at night because fiction tends to keep me up because I gotta turn to the next page.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks so much, Theresa. I appreciate your time. Guys, thanks for listening. I sure love and appreciate you. Blessings and peace. Shalom, shalom.